Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
I got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 545. Today, the Amateur Traveler talks about cowboys and Native Americans, oil, pigeons, and Sooners as we go to Oklahoma City.
I know that I should be heading home, but maybe not today.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Again, we'd be talking about you right now if you were sponsoring this episode, but instead, let's talk about Oklahoma City. I'd like to welcome to the show Sheila Scarborough from tourismcurrents.com, who also blogs at perceptivetravel.com. And Sheila has come to talk to us about Oklahoma City. Sheila, welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Sheila and I have been friends for some time now. I don't know how many years at this point,
Right.
but this is her first time on Amateur Traveler. Sheila, what is your connection with Oklahoma City?
I have made several trips to Oklahoma City. I actually live in Central Texas, but it's a straight shot pretty much up Interstate 35 from where I live just north of Austin. And I've gone there several times for conferences. I've also done some social media training workshops with the tourism people there in Oklahoma City. I've driven through Oklahoma City on the way to events in Kansas that were straight up Interstate 35. So I've ended up there several different times, going in a couple of different directions, but mostly right up the interstate. So each time I go, I've had a chance to look at a different place or maybe go back and revisit a favorite. And I think it's really a tremendously underrated destination. So I jumped at the chance to be able to tell people a little bit about it.
Excellent. And continuing on that thought, why should somebody go to Oklahoma City?
I think it is a really interesting combination of sort of the pioneer spirit of the state of Oklahoma, which has some interesting history of how it was formed, and a very modern outlook. And I'll be very blunt here. We've just finished an election in the United States, and I lean over to the left a little bit. I think a lot of people who know nothing maybe about Oklahoma don't really know what to expect from it, kind of think that the people there all fit a certain mold, perhaps, that they have in their head about what we call red states. That's not necessarily true for the entire state. And I just love the way that the city combines its history and combines a very energetic, modern outlook. There's a tremendous sense of possibility in Oklahoma City. Very forward-leaning, very forward-looking. And I think that would surprise a lot of people if they went and visited there. It will exceed your expectations, absolutely.
Excellent. And what do you recommend we do?
There are events and places to go. I think if you can combine perhaps one of their events with a visit to the city, that's always good. One of the things that I've been privileged to go to is the Red Earth Festival, which is normally in the summer. I think it's in June coming up. And it is a tremendous Native American blowout event with lots of local art and artists There's a Red Earth Gallery in downtown Oklahoma City, and a lot of the same people run the Red Earth Festival. But there's also spectacular Native American dancing. It's a big deal competition, and the costumes are extraordinary. The dancing is just mesmerizing. If you can combine your visit with that kind of an event, I think it really just gives the whole visit a glow, if you will. There's also a famous film festival there. I have not been to it, but I've heard good things about it. So if you can combine your visit to Oklahoma City with some kind of an event, I think that's always fun. For example, one of the main entertainment districts, or more well-known entertainment districts in Oklahoma City, is Bricktown, which is a series of warehouses made of brick that have been converted into entertainment venues and restaurants and things like that. But you can also go to Bricktown for sports events. So in the summer, right there, plunk in the middle of Bricktown, is a minor league baseball stadium. There are games there, obviously, all during the season. And of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the basketball team.
Formerly the Seattle Sonics.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole interesting backstory as
Oh,
to
yeah.
how they ended up in Oklahoma City. And I am a basketball fan, and so I was bummed to see Kevin Durant go to Golden State Warriors. The remaining players are still plenty exciting. That team has almost become the state's team. It's not just Oklahoma City's team. They sell out almost every home game. I mean, the enthusiasm for that basketball team, if you can get a chance to grab some tickets and go see a Thunder game, that is also down there in Bricktown, even if you're not into the entertainment side of it. There's a little waterway, too, in Bricktown, little boats that you can take around on a small tour, somewhat like the Riverwalk in San Antonio, a little bit smaller scale. I do like Bricktown. It has one of my very favorite museums in town, which is banjos, the Banjo Museum.
A museum just about banjos?
A museum just about banjos. And you know what? I don't play the banjo. I'm not really that much into bluegrass, music or any of that kind of stuff, or banjo type music. But gosh, I love the Banjo Museum. Those instruments are just extraordinarily beautiful works of art. I was enthralled. I spent a long time in the Banjo Museum, of all places, and that's also there in Bricktown.
You mentioned, for instance, that this was also a restaurant district. Are there restaurants there that you would recommend?
There are some, and the fact that I'm kind of having to scramble around here to remember where the heck I ate may tell you something. I'm not sure. There are some chain places if you're into that. You can eat, obviously, at the Chickasaw Bricktown Ballpark if you are there.
Okay, and that's the minor league park that you had referred to where the Dodgers play. Isn't that the name of the team? The Oklahoma City Dodgers, yes. AAA affiliate of the LA Dodgers.
Thank you for saving me, because I'm totally not a baseball. I mean, I'll go, but I never even know who's playing. I went to a Cubs game in Chicago, and I'm like, I don't even know who they played or what the score was. It's the experience. But there's Mickey Mantle Steakhouse down there and some other places, but I'm not sure food is really, at least in my experience, is why I would spend a whole lot of time down in Bricktown in terms of eating. So
you mentioned sports, and you mentioned the one museum down in Bricktown. Anything else we want to do before we move on from Bricktown?
I would go ahead and take the little boat ride around.
Okay.
It gives you a nice view of the backs of the warehouses and what they have done with what formerly had been a very depressed area and is now, again, very walkable. There is a sidewalk from the Bricktown area underneath railroad tracks, and there's a really nice Art Deco train station. One of my visits to Oklahoma City, I took the Heartland Flyer, which is an Amtrak train that you can take from the Dallas-Fort Worth area up to Oklahoma City. So I arrived by train, as so many people used to do. I had a rolling suitcase with me, but I was in a downtown hotel, and it was no problem at all to wheel right out of the train station and go to my hotel. And you can also walk into Bricktown under the tracks. It's well lighted. They've done a good job of making sure that people feel safe walking around in the Bricktown area and even leaving it to go into the main part of downtown in Oklahoma City.
Okay, excellent. And then getting back one more time, you recommended that we come for the Red Dirt Festival, if I got the right name right.
Well, Red Earth Festival.
Earth Festival, sorry. Red Dirt is Maui. Okay. went the wrong direction. Are there other Native American things that you would recommend we see if we're going to come for that festival and we want to do something along that theme?
There is, I believe, and I have not been there, one of the major museums in Oklahoma City is a Western Heritage Museum. that I have been told includes a significant portion of that focuses on Native American history in Oklahoma. I have not been there. That would be one option. And to be honest, that's one of the things maybe that can be a little bit of a disappointment in Oklahoma City is that they make such a big deal about Native American heritage. One of their tourism taglines is Oklahoma, Native America. And because of the horrible Trail of Tears and other ways that Native Americans were so viciously herded into what was then Indian territory and became Oklahoma, you have to be sensitive about that kind of thing. And you have to understand, for example, the Oklahoma land rush, where a whole bunch of white people ran in and claimed their claim to live. That resonates, of course, in Oklahoma. But if you're a Native American person, that was a whole lot of people showing up to steal your land, So,
well, let's pause here for a second and make sure that people know what 2 points of history you're talking about. One is that this is the end of the Trail of Tears that started in, I want to say, Georgia, where the Cherokee people, for instance, who had fully assimilated and their thinking was that they were just going to be part of the United States, were forcibly moved out here to Indian territory. That is not one of the nicest chapters of American history. It's certainly one of the saddest chapters, I think, in terms of how they were treated in that process and along the way. So then this becomes Indian territory, for instance, that we talked about in an episode we did on the state of Oklahoma with Robert Reed a while back, who's from Oklahoma. But
yes,
then
he is also.
At some point, Congress says we're going to open this up for homesteading, even though it was Indian territory. So basically, we're stealing the land again, or at least large portions of it, especially the Cherokee Strip is one of the well-known portions. And they basically lined people up on the border of the state and said, at this time on this date, you can go in and claim your homestead. And of course, Oklahoma, a lot of people snuck in early and claimed their land because they cheated, which is why Oklahoma has the Sooners, the people who came before they were supposed to. So it's an odd history.
You'll find, for example, small pockets of Seminole Indians. Well, that's a Florida tribe. What the heck are they doing in Oklahoma? Well, it wasn't their idea. I love Oklahoma City, but there's one thing there that kind of makes me crazy. And you'll see it if you drive to Oklahoma City, you fly over anything. There is an American Indian Cultural Center that they are building there in Oklahoma City, and they've been working on it for years and years. I think they started construction in like 2006. We're moving past 10 years now. It is an enormous tribute to the Native Americans and their culture, but it has run into continuing roadblocks with regard to funding and some other things, putting it together. And so to me, boy, if they could just finish this project, that would rapidly, I think, become one of the main reasons you'd want to go to Oklahoma City, is because you would really get a sense of the Native American culture there. And of course, part of the problem is that right after they started construction, that's when the economy in the U.S. Certainly hit roadblocks. And so people just flat ran out of money. And they've been very slowly but surely building parts of it and continuing to try to add to it. They've suspended construction numerous times. There have been political issues. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know what the intricacies of the problems are. But that to me is one area that, boy, if they could bring that project to closure, that would be the one thing in Oklahoma City to learn more about the Native American influence in the state. And until they complete that, other than things like Red Earth Festival, which is unfortunate.
Okay. Well, you were about to head us downtown. Should we go back to that then?
Yeah, that sounds fine. There is, again, a sense of energy in the downtown area. It's business. There are tons of headquarters. Oil and gas is obviously huge in Oklahoma. And so there are soaring towers. There's one of them that looks like a bottle opener that I think it's Devon Energy's headquarters building. Fabulous, huge, enormous oil and gas thing. But there's some other things to see downtown as well. There is a botanical gardens, Myriad Botanical Gardens, and it has a glassed-in tropical conservatory. I think it's called the Crystal Bridge. Oklahoma City's not in the tropics, right? But they've done a really nice job with this conservatory of putting together a really neat indoor experience as a part of the botanical garden, which I like. There is a historic hotel in downtown that I've stayed at that I recommend, the Skirvin. The Skirvin, I think, now is a Hilton property, but it's an elegant building with a really neat lobby bar, which is a big hangout for a lot of local people. And the other kind of don't miss thing there in downtown is the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum. from the explosion of the Murrah Federal Building there back in, I think it was 1995, I believe. And I went to that museum, and not very many people wake up in the morning and say, wow, let's go see a museum about a real tragedy where a whole bunch of people died and things blew up. But go anyway, because I think you will be surprised by the power of how they have put together the exhibits and the timeline of the explosion and the reactions of normal, ordinary people to a horrific event, the heroism of that day. It is really put together well. In fact, I think they even consulted with the 9/11 Memorial in New York City to show them how to do it right. It is a positive, uplifting experience, and that really surprised me that you could go to a museum of such a tragedy and walk out of there feeling uplifted, of all things. Really surprised me. So that the museum is done very, very well. And then there is an outdoor exhibit where they've set up sculpture that resembles chairs, one for each of the victims, spread out under a green area. And if you see that at night, they are illuminated with a glow. And then there's a commemorative arch and I think a reflecting pool. It is a sobering thing to visit, but it'll be the highlight of your trip. You'll be surprised at what you'll learn and at what you'll walk away with going to the National Museum and Memorial there in downtown Oklahoma City.
Well, and for our international listeners or American listeners who don't remember their history, so this is something that was at the time the largest terrorism attack in the U.S., internal terrorism. It wasn't associated with any sort of international movement or whatever. It was basically a bunch of people who didn't like the federal government who were from the U.S., and they attacked the federal building. And one of the tragic things was the federal building had, among other things, a preschool. And so there were definitely, even if you don't like the federal government, there were definitely people who were just innocent victims because they happened to be there. Overshadowed somewhat by the 9/11 thing that happened just 5 years later, but quite a significant thing, obviously, in Oklahoma City.
Mm-hmm. That is well worth a visit. There's a museum of art there in downtown with some Dale Chihuly glass sculptures that are pretty spectacular. They're really working hard to make the downtown pedestrian friendly, trying to get that bridge where you go under the railroad tracks into Bricktown, make it something that is light and inviting so that people don't feel creeped out when they're walking around. You could stay in a unique place in downtown like the Skirvin, or there's another property, the Colcord Hotel, that I think is actually a converted bank building or business building. I don't think it's purpose built as a hotel. Yeah, but oh gosh, they did a gorgeous job of it. And the views are great, and really like the Colcord a lot. And there's an excellent restaurant in the hotel called, I think, Flint, where I had a divine breakfast when I stayed there. Probably one of the biggest surprises that I had about Oklahoma City is the extent to which the city has planned for growth.
Mm-hmm.
They've got something called MAPS project, and it's Metropolitan something. So I can't remember what it stands for. But, I mean, they've laid out 5 to 10 year, whatever, development plan for their downtown. And so every time I visited Oklahoma City, something is different. One time I visited and a friend of mine there said, well, we've removed a freeway since you were here last. I'm like, what? And they had. There was an overpass that they decided could be rerouted that was ugly as heck, that was messing up some nice views, and kind of like the Embarcadero there in San Francisco that ended up, falling because of the earthquake. But Oklahoma City said, nope, we're going to make this work better. As a consequence, parts of downtown have been torn up with construction for several years.
Sure.
Been a little frustrating, to get around. They are working super hard to finish that up and to enable people to be able to walk all over the place. I remember one time when I stayed at the Colcord, I looked out the window, and this is one of the kind of neat surprises about Oklahoma City. I look out the window of my room, and I saw this futuristic lighted sculpture thing out my window. And I was like, what the heck is that? And so I pulled out my phone, my Google Maps, and I'm like, what am I looking at here? And it turned out to be the Skydance Bridge, which is a part of this whole MAPS downtown development process. It is a piece of modern art. It's a spiky thing that they light up at night in various colors, so it changes colors, and it's supposed to represent the Oklahoma State bird, which is the scissor-tailed flycatcher. So
okay,
you're looking at the bridge, and it's like these two pointy things, and it's because it's supposed to be the flycatcher. That is supposed to be the linkage to another part of town, and the bridge was built before they haven't finished the rest of the linkages, the sidewalks, and all that kind of stuff that's supposed to lead you go over the bridge and you go someplace else and that kind of thing. And so I joked that, they built a bridge to nowhere, at least for a while.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they just hadn't finished the whole MAPS project yet, and it's still in progress. But that's one of the neat things about Oklahoma City is you'll look and you'll say, what the heck is that thing? And you'll find out that there has been just some extraordinarily detailed planning that has gone into making this an accessible, friendly, open to pedestrians kind of city in a way that a lot of other cities just don't get around to, which I really like.
And you mentioned the renewal that's going on, and obviously a lot of the money that is fueling Oklahoma City, as you mentioned, was the oil and natural gas business. I didn't realize until I was getting ready for this show that the Capitol building, this is of course the capital of Oklahoma, actually has active oil derricks on the ground. I mean, this isn't just near oil country. This is oil country.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's a photo, in fact, it may be even online if you Google around for it. There's a photo of the Capitol building kind of at the height of the wildcatter oil boom, and the Capitol building is surrounded by oil derricks. It's the funkiest looking thing you've ever seen. Oh my gosh.
Well, and you mentioned looking out the window of your hotel room. And my picture of Oklahoma City, haven't been there except for the airport, is that when you can get up a few stories and look out, you're going to be able to see for quite a ways. Oklahoma's not this part of Oklahoma I'm picturing is pretty flat.
That's correct. Yeah, you get over into other parts of it, and there are definitely hills and that sort of thing.
Right,
but
right.
This
Over
part,
by the
the
Arkansas
central,
border, for instance. Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit coming up from the south.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there's huge wind farm stuff going up down there on I-35 as you cross the Texas border over the Red River, just like the movies.
Right.
Yeah, it's a lot hillier than you expect, but boy, yes, it flattens out by the time you get to Oklahoma City.
Well, and you mentioned the climate is not tropical. I'm picturing relatively dry, relatively hot in the summertime. And, of course, every once in a while a tornado goes through in terms of weather. I think they've had 13 major tornadoes that have hit the city since they've been keeping records. What am I missing about Oklahoma City in terms of weather, and when should I go?
Well, it's the Great Plains. And so just like the song from the movie Oklahoma, Wind Comes Whistling Down the Plains, oh, yes, it does. And so it's breezy there a lot. Like a lot of places that can get pretty cold in the winter and pretty hot in the summer, your shoulder seasons, your springs and falls, I think. And I'm a big fan of fall. I think fall is a good time. Maybe you'll miss the baseball there downtown, but if you can hit it in the fall, I think that is a nice time of year. The trees turn just a little bit, again, with that sense of energy in the city, and you combine that with the kind of crisp fall air. I think that's a fun time to go.
Excellent. And you mentioned the Red Earth Festival. Are there other festivals or events that are the best day to be in Oklahoma City?
Like I said, there's a film festival there. I'm trying to remember when the date is. I love the name of it because it's called the Dead Center Film Festival, because you're in the dead center of the U.S. That's right. It's also a June festival. So at that point, June, you haven't really, like a lot of places that get hot, you're not on flamethrower temperatures quite yet. That'll happen in August. To have Dead Center there in June, and then to also have Red Earth. It was warm when I was there for Red Earth, but it wasn't unbearable by any means. I'm just a big fan of the fall.
Okay, excellent. What's going to surprise me about Oklahoma City?
Like I said, the items that you find there that have been planned out and you wouldn't expect to see them. For example, fairly close to downtown, and again, as a part of this urban planning project MAPS, there's something near downtown called the Boathouse District. And Oklahoma City has done a good job, especially the tourism folks, with trying to make it more understandable what the different parts of the city are and giving them names so that you can, kind of like in New York, am I in Manhattan? Am I in the Lower East Side? Am I, Upper West Side? That kind of stuff. Same sort of thing. They've done a little bit of that with Oklahoma City. There's a section heading out of downtown that used to be where all the car dealerships were, and it's now called Automobile Alley. And there are lots of lofts and shops and restaurants and interesting things going on in Automobile Alley. You get to know that section of town. But there's another one called the Boathouse District. And they did some major rework with water flow and some other things. There is a river running through the part of downtown, and it has become an Olympic rowing facility. The Olympic rowing team, as in, Skull Row,
Sure, yeah.
trains in Oklahoma City, of all things. There's a local joke that it used to be a waterway and then they diverted it and then they brought the water back through. And so the joke is when it was dry, we used to mow it and now we row it. But Oklahoma City, who the heck thinks of rowing? But the Boathouse District, various teams and local universities that have rowing teams have built futuristic-looking boathouses that resemble the prows, the bows of ships sticking out over the water. And they even have, in the Boathouse District, they have something called the Sky Trail. It's a big kind of playground if you have younger kids, but it also has a confidence course, ropes course that you can climb around, and it goes up quite high, which I went all the way up to the top, and it got my attention, let me tell you what. And they have also hooked up a zip line to it. And so you can get up the top of this thing and then zip line across the river, which I think is pretty cool, over to the other side. And so the Boathouse District, to be able to see this beautiful watercraft going back and forth with teams training. And the latest thing, and I haven't been to this, and this is on my list for the next time I go to Oklahoma City, is they have set up a whitewater training facility. So people can get on inflatable type boats and do a whitewater course that they mapped out and planned out there here in the Boathouse District. So if you want to do some whitewater stuff, it's right there. I wouldn't say a stone's throw from downtown Oklahoma City, but pretty doggone close there in the Boathouse District. And that sort of thing, where you look out a window and there's a futuristic modern bridge. You discover that there's people doing Olympic rowing training in Oklahoma City. It's just very surprising to me, and I just love it. The other section of town that I really like, it's not really surprising, but if you don't have any expectations of Oklahoma City, maybe it'll surprise you, but it's something called the Plaza District. And it's a little ways from downtown, but not far. Nothing is very far. That's a nice thing about Oklahoma City is they do have public transportation, but it's probably easiest to drive, but it's easy to get around. You know, there's not, I know we can cover that a little more later, but it's not hard. I've never sat in an Oklahoma City traffic jam, let's just say, which is nice. But the Plaza District has these really cool shops. I have a T-shirt from one of them that says weekends are for waffles, and it's become like my standard weekend T-shirt. But they also have wonderful restaurants. I think one's called The Mule that features a lot of local craft beer. There's a buzzing craft beer scene in Oklahoma City. And they also have a divine grilled cheese sandwich there, which is just super yummy. They also have a place that I love called Pie Junkie. If you're into pie of any sort.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. You know, do not pass go. Do not collect your pie crust. Go straight to Pie Junkie because they have divine pies of all different sorts, including lots of that they've tried to use, you know, locally sourced or Oklahoma sourced ingredients for them. And it got to be a running joke with me because I would be giving examples of great interaction on social media in some of my tourism currents workshops. And one of the examples I would show is a Twitter exchange with Pie Junkie joking about coming to get pie, but I'd never actually been there. But they got on my radar. And so finally, my last visit to Oklahoma City, I was able to march into Pie Junkie and say, I am here, feed me pie.
And you say locally sourced. I honestly don't know. I think of oil. Clearly, that's not what we're putting on our pie. So what kind of locally sourced ingredients do we have in our Pie Junkie pie?
There was it was a chess pie. If you know anything about the South, chess pie is a pretty standard Southern dish. It's mostly pecan pie without the pecans. It's
which sounds sad to me, but
well, it's a whole lot of eggs and a whole lot of sugar. And so if I recall correctly, they had all kind of the usual ones. You know, they had an apple crumble pie and a blackberry of some sort, coconut cream, that kind of thing. They did have peanut butter chocolate, which is normally my default. But if I recall correctly, there was a sort of like a chess pie. I think it was a buttermilk pie, and it was made with bird dog whiskey, which I think is locally brewed there, which I thought was very cool.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a neat thing, and I appreciate that they had taken the time to not only do a locally sourced pie, but on the next trip now I got to go find. I got to go find.
In fact, it's a splash I'm reading here of Bird Dog Blackberry Whiskey. Just
that was it. Yep. So they were delicious. The staff was great. I carted that off with me. Very pleased that I had finally been able to physically get into Pie Junkie and get a pie. But there's other stuff there in the Plaza District. I like the fact that you look around and you find these little, yes, there's things, downtown and in Bricktown and kind of the usual tourist places, if you will, but it is easy to find these other sections of town like the Plaza District. There is a very vibrant Asian community in Oklahoma City, which might surprise a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of restaurants and that sort of thing in that particular spot. There's Automobile Alley that I've already mentioned. There's Deep Deuce, which was the African-American section of town. And so there's still some opportunities there for some live music and that sort of thing, jazz. So
any more recommendations for restaurants or recommendations for live music places like you were mentioning?
I wasn't able to go to a concert, but there was a pizza place that I went to in Deep Deuce. And I think I just yelped around and looked for it, but it was called the Wedge Pizzeria. It was a tiny place. I mean, teensy tiny. And I think there's more than one. There's a fairly new aloft there in Deep Deuce, and I think that's where I was staying.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's another one in the northwestern part of town. That was some really good pizza. I really liked that, and it was easy to find.
Excellent. Well, and we should say, too, the Oklahoma City website, visitokc.com, is a pretty good resource for planning a trip to Oklahoma City. They have one of the nicer websites that I've seen.
They do. I mean, I'm biased because I just love the people at the tourism organization.
Well, that's why it's better if I say it. So I don't know the people at the tourism board. But
it's true. And they do a great job. There's a section, I think it's about OKC/OKC districts.
Yep.
And you can poke around through there. And they've done a nice job with signage. Online stuff is great. I'm an online nerd. But boy, when you're in Automobile Alley, for example, the lampposts have very distinctive Automobile Alley little banners on them. I mean, like where you are.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah.
There's good maps and things like that. I know that's been, again, a part of the tourism, pedestrian-friendly urban planning thing that they have done is to make sure people know where they are and where to get to the next place. And it's an excellent website.
Excellent. When else would we recommend in or around Oklahoma City?
It's turned out that a lot of the museums are sort of over in what they call the Adventure District.
Okay.
That district's a little bit of a stretch. It's kind of a hodgepodge of stuff in there. Again, one of my favorite gems, again, sort of surprising, is the American Pigeon Museum and Library. Right. Yeah? Okay. So it's like banjos. Like, I don't give a fat rat's patootie about pigeons ordinarily, right? But I found out about this place, and I said, this is crazy. I have to go see it. And it's not big, but it turns out that American racing pigeon organizations, and they still do racing pigeons, are headquartered in Oklahoma City, and they have this little museum of everything you ever wanted to know about breeding pigeons, racing pigeons, and even pigeons at war because...
Oh, sure. World War I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The Lost Battalion and how they were rescued by any American messenger pigeon. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. If I recall, there was a special exhibit about World War I, and I think there's still other wartime. I mean, the U.S. had pigeons as part of our Signal Corps, our communications folks, because, hey, they carried messages, so communications. Right. There was stories about this famous French pigeon. I think the name was Cher Ami, and Cher Ami flew through German gunfire and got shot, but still delivered the message, and she got a French medal at the end of the war. And I drug my son into this thing. He's 17, and he's used to just being taken to places that he thinks are bizarre. I said, you have to see these pigeons. And so when people say, what do I have to see in Oklahoma City? I start reeling things off. And then when I say, you got to go to the Banjo Museum and the Pigeon Museum, I get some looks. But that's what's fun. You learn things that I'm not into breeding pigeons and probably never will be. The whole culture of racing pigeons and special clocks and how that kind of stuff works. And the last time I was there, they had a pigeon loft. They had taken the pigeons off to do some kind of reconstruction of the loft. And I'm not sure now if they're back there. I would check the website and see. But how cool is that you can go see a racing pigeon loft and see actual racing pigeons? So it's a thing. But a little bit... A little bit further out from the center of Oklahoma City, out in a little town called Arcadia, which is not very far. I believe it's sort of north. Of course, Route 66 runs through huge parts of Oklahoma. Yeah. And to be honest, Tulsa, the city of Tulsa, makes a bigger deal about Route 66 than Oklahoma City does. I mean, there are a few places to go. There is one little really funky looking, weird shaped building, like a slice of pie almost, with a big milk bottle on top of it that was on old Route 66. And if you can find it, that's kind of cool. people, but to see one of the main things that I like people to go see is just outside of Oklahoma City in Arcadia. There is a place called Pops, P-O-P-S, Pops in Arcadia. It wasn't part of the old Route 66 during the 60s, let's say, or the 50s. It's relatively newly built, but it is a celebration of sort of Route 66 eateries, and you can get all kinds of good diner type food there, burgers, that kind of thing. But the main thing at Pops is soda pop.
Okay.
Or soda. Yeah.
Sure.
Every kind of soda that you have ever heard of, and plenty that you say, I had no idea this existed. Just bottles and bottles and bottles. In fact, they decorate the place with them. They have big glass windows at Pops, and they've got glass shelves. And so it's really quite artistic. It's a great Instagram opportunity. But there are some ghastly looking soda that's a beautiful color of blue. God knows what the chemicals in it do to you. But they've got a row of blue sodas, and then a row of red sodas, and then a row of orange sodas, and then a row of purple sodas, for all you great knee-high fans out there. And it is just the neatest place. And it's not far at all outside of Oklahoma City. Good food, good service, and you can put together a little six-pack in little Pops cardboard six-pack handled things of 6 different kinds of soda. You can buy yourself a variety of the weirdest soda you can find in there and take it with you. And at night, when it's lit up from the inside with all those colorful bottles of sodas, it's really fun. But there's also a kind of swirly soda bottle sculpture outside that lights up at night, and that's another great photo opportunity. And so Pops in Arcadia, and then just down the road from Pops, just a little way on the original Route 66 highway, is a big round barn that was also a big landmark for Route 66, and you can go inside and tour the barns. You can get a twofer there right outside Oklahoma City.
Well, and you say Route 66, and again, for those people who don't know what we're talking about, this is really nicknamed the Mother Road. It'd be one of the first motor routes across the U.S., and so this predates the interstates and really was replaced by the interstates, and the big difference being the interstates always tried to go around cities so that you could get there quickly, and Route 66 goes through all these little small towns. And so if you see the movie Cars, for instance, that's kind of an homage to Route 66.
Yeah, of course, for international visitors, that's something about the U.S. that many of them know well, and they can see a little bit of that there in Oklahoma City.
And roadside attractions, I think, are really what you think of when you think of Route 66. I have not driven it yet, and it is on my list, honestly.
Yeah, I've done sections of it. I did a chunk in Illinois, and I've done a little bit in Oklahoma. But yeah, there are parts of it that I definitely need to explore. The section of it that goes across the top of Texas, I have not been that far. I mean, if you got to kind of get up around Amarillo, that's Amarillo's 8 hours from where I am, even though I'm kind of leadfoot, and I probably would get there maybe at 7.5. But still, that's a haul. Yeah, there's always neat things to see. And the other thing outside of Oklahoma City, the tourism folks are making an effort. I-35, let's face it, is not the sexiest, most exciting interstate in the world. I mean, really, is any interstate sexy and exciting? But they work very hard. They're trying to rebrand it as Adventure Road. It's a ways south of Oklahoma City, but if you're driving up I-35, certainly worth a stop to see Chickasaw Cultural Center, which is in Sulphur, Oklahoma. It's a ways south. You're talking maybe, I have to go look at Google Maps, but an hour or so. I mean, it's not just right outside like Arcadia is, but that is a neat divert off of the interstate, and it's beautifully done. If you get a chance to see the Chickasaw Cultural Center and see how they are portraying Chickasaw history, language.
The Chickasaw tribe here of Native Americans, just a little context there. Yep, okay.
Correct. And a little bit closer into Oklahoma City, a couple of neat small towns that still have a lot of their downtown intact and are doing fun things with it. Just north of Oklahoma City in Guthrie. Guthrie, I think, has a theater. I've never had a chance to get up there and see something in the theater, but it's got a neat theater and a downtown, small town America kind of vibe. And the same thing south of Oklahoma City in Norman, actually, which is where the University of Oklahoma is.
Oh, okay.
Downtown Norman has a coffee shops and some stores, and there's a diner there called The Diner in downtown Norman where I had an excellent meal. And that's a fun place if you want to get a sense of small town Americana, but you can't really drive very far. Guthrie or Norman, I think, are good opportunities to stop.
Excellent. Anything else we want to cover before we get to my last 4 questions?
No, I don't think so.
You're standing in the prettiest spot in Oklahoma City. Where are you standing, and what are you looking at?
Oh, I love the Skydance Bridge, and I love the glass Chihuly in the Oklahoma City Museum of Art. I know those are both sort of, you're looking at a sculpture or something, but those are really just eye candy for me, I think. Can I get a third one? Probably standing, if you can line up the various sort of corners of the boathouse district, looking down the river. If you can get a skull in the picture and somebody going on the zip line and looking down the various sort of futuristic looking boathouses, I think that's an awesome view.
Excellent. One thing that makes you laugh and say only in Oklahoma City.
Oh my God, well, pigeons or banjos. Gosh, don't make me pick. But really, probably the banjo thing fits into people's impressions of Oklahoma. So gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous musical instruments.
And finish this thought. You really know you're in Oklahoma City when what?
You probably need to be eating a steak.
Okay.
Although there's tons of other options. Now, there's a Cattleman's Steakhouse. Mm-hmm. I think there's like a Stockyards type or former Stockyards type district.
Right.
Maybe it's on Western Avenue. You can do the cowboy thing. So you can get a steak there at Cattleman's, but also Flint. For me, it's got to be medium rare. Don't overcook your steak, right? But a really good steak at a really cool restaurant downtown like Flint there in the Colcord, that's a pretty cool Oklahoma City experience.
Excellent. And if you had to summarize Oklahoma City in just 3 words, what 3 words would you use?
Pioneer, energy, spirit.
Excellent. Our guest again has been Sheila Scarborough. We mentioned that Sheila blogs at perceptivetravel.com, and that's also with Tim Leffel, who's been a guest on the show before, talking about San Miguel de Allende and Guanajuato, Mexico. But I wanted to actually feature the other business, which is a little less relevant to most of the listeners, but you have a thing for small towns. You've already shown us on the show, and you actually do that somewhat for a business.
Yeah, at Tourism Currents, we do social media training for tourism organizations. And we did do a workshop there in Oklahoma City, and we've done things with some larger cities. Mm-hmm. But what has turned out happening is that we do end up spending time in smaller towns. And it's ironic because I'm totally a city kid. I tell people, you put me in front of farm equipment and I'm just lost. But my business partner, Leslie, is a small town girl. And I have found that it's some of the smaller towns that are becoming to discover how powerful social media and digital communications can be for getting the word out about their town. I mean, how else would you find out about downtown Norman or some of these other smaller places? But now it's so much fun to teach smaller towns like that the power of connecting with the visitors who love them, even the locals who love them, who like to talk them up on social media. But I found myself spending a lot of time in smaller towns and rural areas because hey, now they have a level playing field. They don't have to have big bucks to get worldwide visibility. They just have to roll up their sleeves and do the work. And they do. That's really a lot of fun for me.
Well, Sheila, thanks so much for coming on Amateur Traveler and sharing with us your love for Oklahoma City.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Chris.
In news of the community, I had 2 very nice iTunes reviews. The first one from Becky from the UK, who said, "To say this review is long overdue is an absurd understatement. I have listened to and gotten an immense value from the Amateur Traveler for nearly 10 years. It works on every level, practical, inspirational, educational. It is one of my first ports of call when planning a trip and helps me craft itineraries everywhere from Barcelona to Ayutthaya, Thailand, Croatia, Iceland, Vietnam, Laos, and many more I'm surely forgetting. It has also introduced me to countless corners of the planet, including Socotra, Gambia, and Georgian Bay. Thank you, Chris, for doing what you do. You're a cornerstone of the podcast world, unrivaled in the travel category, and should be immensely proud of the catalog and community you've created." Wow, Becky, thanks. And then Anna from Russia said, "I am both a traveler and occasional travel blogger, so I go through a lot of travel-related content on a regular basis. I've tried dozens of travel podcasts, and Amateur Traveler leaves the competition far behind. Thanks to the host Chris Christensen's guidance, each destination-focused episode delivers the right mix of personal storytelling and universally useful information. Chris knows when an episode has worked or hasn't and needs a redo, and when a single feature on a major destination just isn't enough. At this point, I have listened to more than 300 out of 500 plus episodes and have enjoyed comparing travel notes to my own experiences, as well as used the episodes to plan traveling and destination ideas. I've also discovered wonderful travel blogs and other podcasts, such as Join Us in France, that were featured by Chris. I'm looking forward to thousands of episodes more. Thousands of episodes more. I get tired just thinking about that, Anna, but thank you so much for your comments. If you want to leave a review of The Amateur Traveler, that helps people find the show, so thanks to both Anna and Becky. With that, we're going to end this episode of Amateur Traveler. If you have a question, send an email to host@amateurtraveler.com, or better yet, leave a comment on this episode at amateurtraveler.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Pinterest, or Instagram as Chris2X, and as always, thanks so much for listening.